This woman claims she was the lover of Osama bin Laden, the man whose name became a symbol of global terrorism. Her name is Kola Boof.
Her name is Kolabof. Kola Boof. Kola Boof.
A Sudanese-born writer, she says the leader of Al-Qaeda kept her captive for 6 months, subjected her to cruelty, yet showered her with lavish gifts.
They knew how brutally Osama had treated me. Thank God she already knew that I never loved Osama. I didn't like him.
Kola Boof is also known as a high-class escort who had intimate ties with world leaders such as Muammar Gaddafi and Hosni Mubarak. But how did this woman manage to get close to some of the most powerful men in the world? And how did she end up in Osama bin Laden's gilded cage? Kola told her shocking story in a book and numerous interviews, revealing the darkest secrets and disturbing details of what happened behind closed doors, details that send chills down your spine, and show a side of bin Laden you never imagined.
Former mistress of Osama bin Laden is sharing her pillow talk.
The former mistress of Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the September 11, 2001 attacks in the United States, was not just a terrorist. He was a religious fanatic, willing to sacrifice the lives of thousands in the name of his ideology. Yet his life and origins were far removed from the image of an ascetic he tried to project. Bin Laden was born into one of the wealthiest families in Saudi Arabia. His father was a billionaire who owned a vast construction empire, and the family controlled a fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars. From childhood, Osama was accustomed to luxury, expensive cars, sprawling mansions, personal security, and the freedom to travel anywhere in the world. By the time he was leading his terrorist network, he had 4 wives and more than 20 children. In his world, women had no voice. Their role was to be completely obedient to their husband. Bin Laden's wives often had no idea what he was doing outside the home, and certainly did not grasp the scale of the harm he brought to the world. They were not meant to ask questions, could not leave the house without permission, and were never involved in decision-making. Behind the facade of strict religiosity, however, were contradictions. Despite publicly condemning decadent Western lifestyles, bin Laden spent vast sums on pleasures, including lavish gifts for beautiful women. He had mistresses, a fact that completely contradicted his own claims of righteousness and piety. One of these mistresses was Kola Boof, a writer born in Sudan but holding American citizenship. The connection between her and the leader of Al-Qaeda seemed almost impossible. Bin Laden despised America and everything it represented, while Kola was not only a citizen of that country, but also an African woman, her appearance and heritage in direct contrast to his so-called racial preferences. What could have brought together two people so different? The answer is a dark story filled with control, fear, and contradictions. One that Kola Boof would later dare to share with the world. Her real name is Naima bint Harith. Today, the world knows her as Kola Boof. But at the start of her life, there was no fame, no books, no scandals. There was Sudan, the scorching sun, dusty roads, and a childhood cut short by gunfire. When Naima was 6 years old, she witnessed something no child should ever see. Her parents, brave people who spoke openly about the reality of slavery in Sudan, were murdered right before her eyes. That day was burned into her memory. The screams, the noise of the crowd, the smell of blood, and the hollow fear that settled deep inside and never left. 2 years later, fate carried her across the ocean. At the age of 8, she was adopted by an African-American family in the United States. Naima received a new name, a new country, and a new life. She became part of a large household that included 7 other adopted children. Her adoptive parents were strict but caring. They saw the shadow of the past in her eyes and often took her to psychiatrists, hoping it would help quiet the memories of that horrific night. Childhood in America was entirely different. A spacious home, school, television, and new friends. But inside, she was still the Sudanese girl who didn't speak English and approached everything with caution. It took her several years to speak fluently, and only by the age of 14 did she truly open up to the world. As a teenager, Kola became indistinguishable from other American girls. She listened to Madonna, dreamed of a glamorous life, and imagined marrying a rich, successful man. But there was always an untamed energy inside her, a yearning to experience more than the quiet life of a suburban neighborhood could offer. Her adoptive family tried to protect her, but she remained a problem child. Sudden mood swings and impulsive decisions were perhaps echoes of the trauma she had endured. By 17, she was already shaping her own path. She began dating, considered a career in modeling or acting, and was drawn to bright lights, travel, and risky adventures. She knew how to charm and how to make an impression. Before long, she stepped into a world where beautiful women received expensive gifts and traveled abroad on the dime of wealthy men. She visited Egypt and Israel, living out of suitcases as if she were changing scenes in a movie about her own life. At the time, she had no idea that ahead lay the most dangerous and controversial chapter she would ever write. In her autobiography, Diary of a Lost Girl, the autobiography of Kola Boof, she describes in detail the evening that changed her life forever. It was 1996 in Morocco. Marrakesh breathed with spices and heat, street lamps casting golden light onto the narrow alleyways. In one of the city's restaurants, Kola was having dinner with a friend, a well-known Sudanese football player. Everything changed when several men in traditional white robes entered the room. One of them, tall, lean, with an intense gaze, immediately drew attention. His guards approached Kola, politely but firmly, and asked her to follow them to a table in the corner. There, over a cup of tea, sat Osama bin Laden. He greeted her and asked what she was eating. Playing along with a teasing tone, Kola replied, "Lion meat." His expression hardened instantly. "From this day forward, you will never eat lion meat, and you will not see any other man but me," he said. His voice was commanding and firm. Then, without warning, he made a sharp gesture that startled her. Kola got up and ran out of the restaurant. She managed to return to her hotel, but days later, there was a knock at her door. On the threshold stood Osama, surrounded by 7 men. He told her he liked her and wanted them to be friends. Kola asked him to leave, but he sent his guards to wait outside and stepped into her room. He asked her to prepare something to eat. Kola made tea and a salad. Their conversation took an unusual turn when he asked why she braided her hair. When she said she simply liked the style, he ordered her never to braid it again and to wear it like Whitney Houston's. He called Houston the most beautiful woman he had ever seen and confessed he dreamed of visiting America to meet her in person. That evening, he spoke of his many houses, over 20 mansions, and more than 25 children by different women. He said he would name one home Naima in her honor and claimed he wanted to give one of his properties to Whitney Houston once her husband was no longer in the way. Kola says that this marked the start of her unwanted relationship with Osama. She insists she could not run or resist. In Morocco, he had powerful security, and his connections in the Arab underworld made any escape extremely dangerous. Later, she learned he had initially mistaken her for a high-priced escort. She denied this, telling him she worked as a model and actress in Morocco. But Osama dismissed it. The comment deeply offended her, but she had no power to change the situation.
But no, I'd never liked him. I didn't want to be with him. I didn't love him. It wasn't a normal relationship.
This marked the beginning of a story Kola had long tried to bury, but eventually decided to share with the world. From the very first meeting, Osama made it clear that Kola should belong to him alone. Their encounters became regular, and he quickly took control over every part of her life. Generosity and control went hand in hand. He gave her money for a new wardrobe, presented her with gifts, a sapphire necklace, diamond earrings, bottles of expensive perfume, and fine lingerie. He arranged for her to stay in luxurious apartments at the 5-star La Maison Arabe Hotel in Marrakech, a place frequented by royalty and celebrities. La Maison Arabe was the very definition of elegance and indulgence. Hidden within the narrow alleys of the Medina, it was an oasis of marble floors, fragrant gardens, and shimmering pools. Kola's suite had its own terrace, a private view over manicured gardens where lanterns glowed at night. Inside, there was a fireplace for cool Moroccan evenings, a vast bed with crisp white linens, and a bathroom where steam rose from a deep spa bath. 2 swimming pools lay tucked among palm trees, and the air was scented with orange blossoms and warm spices from the hotel's kitchens. Les Trois Saveurs, the in-house restaurant, served an exquisite mix of French, Moroccan, and Asian cuisine. Dinners could be taken beneath carved wooden ceilings or on the terrace overlooking the pools. Breakfast by the water came with silver trays, fresh pastries, sweet mint tea, and exotic fruit. If she wished, there was a piano bar for evening drinks, or quiet afternoons spent with a complimentary bottle of wine and delicate Moroccan tea. Cooking workshops, private spa treatments, and the hum of distant music made the hotel a jewel in the heart of Marrakech. On the surface, it looked like a dream. Marble floors, soft carpets, the best food in the city, and strolls through the hotel's beautiful gardens. But Kola quickly realized this dream had walls. She could not go anywhere she wanted. She was always being watched discreetly, but without pause. From the start, he insisted she call him Somi, a nickname, he said, reserved only for those closest to him. Sometimes he told her to call him Master. It was not a joke. He wanted the word to carry submission. He had strict rules. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, he prayed all day. On those days, she was forbidden to touch him or speak to him without permission. He enjoyed duck hunting, ate unusual combinations like yogurt or watermelon with pepper, and sometimes smoked marijuana. He forced Kola to wear a 1960s-style hairstyle, and any change from that was seen as defiance.
It was a situation where I really was against my will. I had no choice to be there, and I made the best of it because I was determined to survive.
At first, Kola thought these were just quirks, but the luxury hotel soon began to feel like a prison. She could not leave without his consent. Even simple requests to go to the market or walk in the park were refused. She was told everything she needed would be brought to her room. Sometimes he would disappear for days. When Kola asked where he had been, the guard said he was either working or with one of his wives. In 1996, she had no idea who Osama bin Laden really was. To her, he was just a wealthy and influential man, not yet the symbol of global terrorism. Their relationship was unstable. At times, they could talk peacefully or even read poetry to each other. Osama revealed that he wrote poems himself and liked to share them. But more often, he was harsh, insulting her, reducing her to tears, and sometimes hitting her.
And he was terribly abusive.
One day, after she admitted to having been involved with one of his friends, he exploded in rage. The outburst ended with Kola in the hospital, her nose and ribs broken. She told the police that Osama bin Laden had beaten and kept her in the hotel against her will, but they did not believe her. In another conversation, he confessed that he had first noticed her years earlier in Libya, at a reception in one of Muammar Gaddafi's mansions. She explained that she had been there as an invited actress, not for other reasons. According to her, Gaddafi often invited young performers to his events and paid them simply for being there. There were moments she described as deeply humiliating. At times, he would demand that she perform intimate acts in front of his associates, and then with them. She felt disgust and helplessness. At one point, Kola became so exhausted by the constant control that she grabbed a knife and stabbed one of his associates. She hoped prison would be her escape. She was arrested, but Osama managed to secure her release. After that, he even assigned her a personal assistant. But she trusted no one. She felt every moment of her life was under surveillance. The cruelty did not stop. Once, she recalled, he forced her to wear a dog leash. For her, it became yet another symbol of the gilded cage she was trapped in, luxurious on the outside, but cold and inescapable within. Their relationship was drifting toward an inevitable end. More and more often, Osama left Kola alone in the hotel, disappearing for days or even weeks. He traveled to Afghanistan, Kenya, Egypt, Greece, always on business trips. Sometimes he didn't even warn her. She would simply wake up to find his belongings gone. The silence he left behind was heavier than any argument. She felt abandoned, yet she remained a prisoner. Guards and servants still watched her every move. One day, Kola realized she was pregnant. The news shocked her. In another life, under different circumstances, it might have been the beginning of something new. But not here, and not with him. She knew that carrying Osama's child was dangerous. He would never allow anyone to exist outside his control, especially an illegitimate child. Kola decided to keep it secret. But her secret didn't last. A servant noticed the changes and told Osama. His reaction was cold and immediate. He didn't confront her, didn't ask questions. He simply made a decision. The child would not be born. The order was given quietly, without drama. Something was slipped into her food. Whatever it was, it brought on unbearable pain. She understood exactly what was happening, but it was already too late to stop it. That night, the world around her turned black and white, stripped of sound and smell. There was only the tearing, crushing pain. Afterwards, Osama told her she was free. She could go wherever she wanted. He promised her some money to start over and said she could keep everything he had given her: jewelry, clothes, luxury items worth around $200,000. But even their farewell became another humiliation. His tone carried a cold superiority, as if to remind her she had always been nothing more than a passing indulgence, one he could discard at will. And yet, true freedom was still an illusion. For 6 months she had been unable to escape, constantly watched, tracked by a tiny device hidden in one of her teeth. She left, but she knew that escaping his shadow would be far more difficult than simply walking out of his hotel. Several years had passed. The world was already a different place. On the front pages of newspapers and in breaking news broadcasts, one name kept appearing over and over again: Osama bin Laden. He had become the most wanted terrorist on the planet, a man whose face even children recognized. For most, it was the face of an enemy. For Kola Boof, it was the face of someone she had once known far too closely. When the first major attacks shook the world in 1998, she couldn't immediately believe that the man behind them was the same Sami she had lived with in a luxury Marrakech apartment. Yes, he had been strange, quick-tempered, and cruel, but to imagine him as the leader of a global terrorist network? At the time, it seemed impossible. Kola wanted to forget those 6 months, to erase them completely from her life. She didn't want to tell anyone, didn't want to relive it. The last thing she needed was to bring shame upon herself or her family. But then, everything changed. Her real name, Naima bint Harith, surfaced in the press, along with insinuations about her connection to bin Laden. Worse still, she was placed on a list of suspected terrorists. For U.S. authorities, she suddenly became someone who needed to be investigated. From that moment on, her life became a constant shadow of threats. Unknown calls, letters filled with insults, ominous warnings. In Sudan, she was declared a dangerous woman. By that time, Kola had already built a new identity for herself: writer, human rights activist, advocate. Her critics quickly found an explanation. She was using bin Laden's name to draw attention, sell books, and gain fame. Kola denies this. In her words, such notoriety was more a curse than a blessing. She hadn't sought out sensationalism or cheap publicity. At some point, she simply had no choice but to speak. In a 2006 interview, she said, "But once the United States became aware of it and placed me on a suspected terrorist list and threatened to take away my citizenship, I really didn't have any choice but to admit to it and to tell my side of what happened." According to her, it was the only way to clear her name, remove the label of suspected terrorist, and keep her U.S. citizenship. She insisted that she had been with Osama against her will, that he had held her captive, and that she had feared for her life. But here was the paradox. When the Western press labeled her bin Laden's slave, Kola publicly objected. In her autobiographical book, Diary of a Lost Girl, the autobiography of Kola Boof, she called herself his ex-lover, not his slave. This contradiction only fueled the controversy. Some journalists didn't believe her at all. Some called her a liar, others a prostitute, and some even suggested she was a complete fabrication, a myth designed for media provocation. And to be fair, the suspicions weren't entirely baseless. On one hand, Kola claimed she had been kept prisoner, denied freedom. On the other hand, she openly admitted that bin Laden's gifts to her amounted to some $200,000. Witnesses also emerged with a different story. Some claimed that in 1996, during her time with bin Laden, they had seen her shopping in Milan. A former employee of the Moroccan hotel where they stayed insisted that theirs had been a romance, one that ended only because bin Laden refused to marry her. Where the truth ended and the fiction began, by then, was almost impossible to tell. Kola has always insisted that everything she wrote in her book Diary of a Lost Girl, the autobiography of Kola Boof, is true. Every word, every episode. In her view, much of the harsh reaction to her revelations stemmed not only from the subject matter, but also from her origin. She is convinced that people were prejudiced against her simply because she is African. While the Western press attacked her with accusations ranging from open skepticism to outright insults, a far more dangerous threat came from the other side. Islamic extremists swore to kill her. These threats were real. She knew that the people making them were not in the habit of speaking idly. At the time, Kola was married and raising 2 children. The danger loomed not only over her, but also over the ones she loved most. Malicious rumors spread. Some claimed her eldest son was the child of bin Laden. She categorically denied it, but understood that the louder the scandal grew, the faster such gossip spread. Her life became a fragile balance between public exposure and survival. Fortunately, the United States authorities placed her under protection, something that may well have saved her life. Despite the constant fear, she agreed to appear on several major television shows, telling her side of the story about her relationship with Osama. Today, Kola Boof is known as an author. 7 of her books have been published in 8 countries. She continues to speak about women's rights and the injustice African women face in Western society. But as she herself admits, the only man she has ever truly loved is the father of her children. Everything else belongs to the past, to that dangerous and surreal half-year she lived through like a nightmare, a time that forever changed her life. The story of Kola Boof is more than just a scandal involving the name of the world's most wanted terrorist. It's a tale of how fate can throw a person into the most unexpected and dangerous circumstances. It's about a clash of cultures, about how personal freedom can be destroyed by someone else's will, and about how hard it is to prove the truth when the world has already made up its mind. You can choose to believe Kola's words or doubt them, but one thing is certain: she found herself in a situation that most people would never have survived. Her story contains both luxury and humiliation, gifts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and fear for her own life, public accusations, and a fight for the right to tell her side. Her experience is a reminder that behind sensational headlines, there are always people with their own traumas, motives, and truths that may never be fully heard. But what do you think? Do you believe Kola Boof, or do you think her story was fabricated for fame and money? Share your opinion in the comments. It matters. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. Thank you for watching.